there are these, what they call in national security speak, low probability, high impact events. And certainly the threat of any usage of nuclear weapons would fall into that category. I think you could make an argument that right now there is a big difference between even different parts of the Soviet era when the U.S. And its allies were squaring off against the Soviet Union. There were nukes all over Europe, and everything was kind of hair trigger. And so the sense of mutually assured destruction was very much in the background of any nuclear first strike. But right now, Ukraine, a tactical nuke, Europe, it's a different environment. It feels like maybe Putin just thinks he could get away with it this one time. That's the concern that people have, and especially given what just happened over the weekend, that's an even bigger threat, it seems. There was a bridge that was truck bombed, and it's a bridge that is 12 miles long and connects the Russian Federation to the Crimean Peninsula. It cost billions of dollars, and it was built after Russia illegally annexed Crimea in 2014. And this bridge was at least temporarily taken out of commission with a bombing. This really upsets, obviously, Putin and the Russian high command because it would effectively cut off Crimea from military and just logistics reinforcements in general. Clay, there are now missile strikes happening on Ukrainian cities where the Russians are just firing off missiles and hitting cities wherever just to punish the cities. This is how the Russians wage war. They don't care where they're landing. They don't care who they kill. They're just trying to create further devastation in response to this. And here is, for example, Congressman Ted Lieu, who is referring to Biden last week at a fundraiser, spoke about the need to avoid Armageddon. Here's a Democrat member of Congress saying, yeah, we do need to talk about this.
Let me first say that a nuclear war cannot be won and must never be fought. And I think that's what President Biden was trying to convey by using the words he used to convey to Vladimir Putin that a nuclear war simply cannot be won because it will result in nuclear Armageddon. It would obliterate Russia. And while I think Putin is evil, I don't think he's stupid. If he were to use a tactical nuclear weapon in Ukraine, for example, that fallout could go anywhere, including other countries, including Russia itself. So I don't think Putin is going to want to do that, but his military is underperforming.
Okay, Buck, so here's my question for you. You last week said if you were assessing the likelihood of a tactical nuke being used, because I think we've been ahead of a lot of the media out there saying, hey, this is kind of a dangerous situation. To your point, low probability, high impact event. This would potentially trigger a World War III type situation, although I would point out that I think Putin acting would be so egregiously beyond the bounds of acceptable behavior that even countries that might be inclined to support Russia, like China and Iran, would backpedal a little bit and throw their hands up. It still creates a massive issue for the United States and NATO allies in terms of what do you even do if Putin uses a tactical nuke? And we still don't know what the right response calibrated would be. I mean, that's difficult. But last week, Buck, you were saying 20% chance you thought that Putin would use a nuke. I'm just curious, given the bombing of the bridge, which was an act of, I think it's fair to say, accelerant behavior by Ukraine, given the then response by Russia to start sending missiles that it's impossible to say at this point have a clear military objective. They're just angry, and they're raining down missiles now as much as they can on parts of Ukraine that they have no opportunity of being able to control. Do you think the number is bumped up now above 20% compared to last week? Because it seems to me that we have accelerated in terms of the contentious nature of what was already a very contentious situation, even since last week when we were talking about this.
So here's how I view it, and and back in the CIA days, we would do some wargaming and have an understanding of this. I would say this is, when I say 20%, I mean, you can't really put odds on these things. It's not really possible. But by 20%, I'm trying to indicate that this is a realistic enough possibility that it is not irresponsible or a waste of time to discuss it. Because usually talking about, like, so when Trump wanted to speak to Kim Jong-un and the media was saying, oh, my gosh, he's going to fire a nuke at Hawaii and there's all this, that's irresponsible. I mean, the chance of Kim Jong-un doing that was infinitesimal, right? We have to have this conversation, if you want to say it's 10%, 20%, whatever, because it is a realistic enough possibility that actions could be taken by our government that make it a less likely scenario, right? So it's, you don't want to, you go into a doctor's office. If he says to you, we got to talk about the fact that you have a 1 in a million chance of dying tomorrow, you'd say, well, that's crazy, doc. Like, I don't need to know about a 1 in a million chance. But he needs to have a conversation with you if in the next 6 months you got a 10 or a 20% chance of dying from something unless you address it, right? You
wouldn't be able to sleep at night, to put this into perspective. That's a really good analogy. If you went to the doctor and they took, let's just say, a sample and they were testing it, and your doctor sat down and he said, hey, I'm not sure exactly how this is going to go, but there is around a 20% chance that you are going to test positive for terminal cancer and you have less than a year to live. Every single person listening to us right now, even though there's an 80% chance that you might be okay, would have real difficulty sleeping over that.
But if the doctor called you in and was all, really anxious, he goes, look, there's a solid 1 in 780,000 chance that you'd be like, what are you doing? Like, that's what I mean by it's irresponsible. Like, you're creating a problem where there is no problem. Usually talking about a Russian nuclear strike is for, Tom Clancy books, or it's not something, it's realistic right now that he would do it. And here's why. Yeah, the strike on the bridge, and there are also a lot of Ukrainian senior, including Zelensky, were saying, rough day in Crimea, like Ukraine's behind this. Everyone's assuming Ukraine's behind this. We just had the pipeline
which makes me think that Ukraine is behind that too.
Right. So there's a momentum here that's very going after critical infrastructure strikes. Now, this is a war. I'm not saying that, this is what Ukraine is going to do. But remember, Russia has for now 8 years had Crimea as Russian Federation territory, and they just held this referendum. We may say it's a sham, but they don't care. They now claim these areas as Russian territory in eastern Ukraine. And so now you have to think about it from Putin's point of view. Put aside, and we always have to do this, he's evil. Yeah, we know, but we're trying to avoid a nuclear war here. From his point of view, if the Ukrainians now start rolling up Russian forces and trying to expel them all and all the government infrastructure they put in place in these areas, they view that as effectively an invasion, and I know this is crazy, of Russian Federation territory backed by NATO and America. Now, if he's not going to use nukes to push back that kind of an incursion, short of getting nuked first, when is he going to use them? You start to see how this conversation becomes very concerning, which is why serious people are saying, not people that are just looking for attention and clicks and, the sky's falling, not people that'll say anything because a Republican is president. Serious people are saying we need to be very aware of what's going on here, because you think the world economy and everything else is in rough shape right now. You have any kind of nuclear weapons usage, you will see you'll obviously see mass casualties, a lot of things. You'll see a stock market crash. I mean, it gets real scary real fast.
And the analogy also I would use here, Buck, and I think you'll buy in too, is Zelensky right now has his blood up over this battle in this war, understandably so. But it appears to me that he is not thinking, at least in public, in a rational way, right? Because anybody out there who says, okay, whether it's Elon Musk, whether it is any sort of political figure who says, hey, let's try to figure out a solution to this war. Let's try and end it, even if it may make both sides not very happy with the solution, even if Russia may end up with more territory than they had before. That's preferable to the world than what's going on right now in terms of the accelerants that are occurring. And, Buck, to me, what is now becoming quite clear is Zelensky is not going to be satisfied unless every Russian boot is off of Ukrainian soil. And I understand his perspective on that being the goal of Ukraine and Ukraine's leader, but that shouldn't be the goal of the world. The goal of the world should be to create some form of peace, that maybe we have a demilitarized zone in some region almost like we do with Korea, so that we end the danger of Vladimir Putin going full nuclear. And my concern is right now we've created a world where if you speak out and say anything other than Ukraine is the greatest country in the history of the world and they have to have complete and total victory, somehow you're a Vladimir Putin stooge. Our friend Randy Weingarten, Buck, of all people, teachers union head.
The opposite of our friend, but yes. Yes.
She's in Ukraine.
What?
Like, why? You didn't see this?
Wow, is she trying to ruin their country too?
She's in Ukraine, Buck. We need to pull this up. I'll hit it in the next segment for sure. She sent out a tweet saying she was concerned about schools being shut down in Ukraine. I'm not kidding. This is a real thing. Randy Weingarten,
we're going to have to get out
union,
the drop button here, the bleep button in a second. Are you serious?
The teachers union, our crew, make sure that this is not some elaborate scam that I bought into. And this morning, I was looking at a Randy Weingarten tweet. She's in Ukraine, and she is concerned about Ukrainian schools being shut down over the war. Both of those things are crazy because she shut down American schools for 2 years over COVID, which had virtually zero risk to anyone relatively young and healthy. But why is she in Ukraine? This has turned into, Buck, into a left-wing social justice warrior cause. And they now will attack anybody who says anything other than the only solution here is that every Russian be defeated and that Ukraine have complete sovereign territory. While, meanwhile, we got hundreds of thousands of people streaming across every month into this country, and nobody cares about our borders at all.
It's amazing. Democrats, the only wars that the leftists in our own country want to fight are the ones where conservatives are like, I don't know about this one, guys. I don't know. Then all of a sudden they're, take out the B-1 bombers. Let's go. They're call in the cavalry, fire the machine bazookas or whatever. They're so fired up.
The same people, Buck, who were willing to shut down our entire economy over a virus with a virtually 0% risk to most American citizens are now demanding that we risk world war over how much territory in the Donbass and the whatever that Ukraine ends up with.
It's amazing. Someone somewhere down the line is going to do a deep study into the correlation between double masking and 3 Ukraine flags on your Facebook page or your Twitter bio. Somehow those two things go together. You'd think they have nothing to do with each other, but somehow they do.